Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday morning, pretty early, especially if you're not on Eastern time. You're waking up real early for this. But we've got a huge NBA slate today, so big that I took yesterday off from even doing this breakdown because I looked ahead and said, I like Saturday's slate better, and there's a lot more to cover. So been putting more time in on that, and I am incredibly excited to have my friend Phil Naessens back on the show today. Phil, how are you this morning?
Hey, I'm doing great. How are you?
Man, I'm doing great. Any day that I get to hang out with you and talk some basketball is a good day.
Yeah,
I'm
I wore
great.
this for you, by the way.
Yeah, hey, give them if you're up for it, give them the quick story on where you got that hat.
Okay, so anyway, I'm friends with Jay Fiedler and his brother Scott. Scott comes on my show every Friday. Scott's one of we're like brothers, basically. We went to Vegas, worked together, whatever. Anyway, when Jay got cut by the Vikings, he gave me a hat that he wore on the sidelines. And I lost that during the hurricane. So anyway, long story short is I'm helping mom move. I guess it was in March, April, and she handed me this hat and said, "Hey, this could be yours." And I looked and it had the number 11. It was the other one. So you know what? Sometimes when you lose things, they come back. And they come back in great big ways. So I wore this just for you, though, because you're a Vikings fan.
I absolutely am. This is like one of the hats I normally wear on these things. So
right,
definitely
I know,
a Vikings fan. Yeah.
It seems I work with a lot of Vikings fans because my Monday show is a Vikings fan. Michael Noonan is a Vikings fan for 60 years.
Nice.
So he's a big one too. I have a soft spot for Minnesota because after Jay got cut, Randall Cunningham got injured. Jay ended up being the backup there, did pretty well. At least Dennis Green loved him. And long story short, he ended up in Jacksonville for a year, started that last game, killed that team, and then was the starting quarterback for 4 years at the Dolphins replaced Dan Marino. So the Vikings gave him that second chance, and that made his life.
The other reason you might have a soft spot for Vikings fans is we all have to be humble because we get humbled on a season by season basis. So you can't be too arrogant if you're a Vikings fan.
No, and I'm a Lions fan too. So this is right. This isn't going to work long today. But you know what? I wore it in your honor.
I appreciate it.
And plus, we've got an 11-game slate. This has number 11 underneath it. So boom, it worked.
Let's destroy it.
We will. Go for it.
Well, let's jump in. Like you said, we got a lot of games to get through today. So let's jump in and get started. First game up, we're going to start off with one that I know you'll want to talk about right off the bat. We got the Knicks at the Blazers. The Knicks -5.5, and the total is 217.5.
The Knicks crushed this team tonight.
All right.
No, they just do. Julius Randle's averaging like 27 points and 12 rebounds over his last 5. The defense has been a little better, not much. I mean, they've given up a lot of points over the last 5 games. But at the end of the day, Portland's a mess. They traded away C.J. McCollum. They got some players in return, of course. But the Knicks are on fire. And when the Knicks are on fire, you got to roll with them because you never know when they're going to get cold again and cost us all money. But I like the way that they're playing a lot. And I have this number here somewhere. I have my notepad, but I also have something here. Okay, Portland is like 2-8 in money line bets in their last 10 games, and they've lost basically 6.18 total units. So you want to always bet against them. And the other thing you want to keep in mind with the Knicks is that they are 1-8 in over bets in their last 10 games as a favorite. So that's a total of 7 units lost. So you're probably looking at an under here, I would think. But more importantly, you're going to have to take the Knicks, man. You just got to roll with the Knicks. They're going to clock this team, and that's all there is to it. Yeah.
All right. I like it. I like the confidence on that play, too. You're probably going to end up pushing me toward a play here because I was a little bit in the middle. Let me tell you a few reasons why. So One reason I did initially lean toward the Knicks when I first looked at this game. The Knicks are 12-24 on one day of rest. Obviously, that's a really big sample size at this point, so it doesn't take into account how they're playing recently. But the reason that I wrote that one down is that it's last in the league on one day of rest. So not the best thing for them. But Portland's only 3-6 against the spread on 2 days of rest. I do wonder if RJ Barrett's going to be out here. He is listed as out where I looked this morning, but a lot of times when I look early in the morning, those things can change by the afternoon. That's not a killer either way for me, but I do feel like RJ Barrett's been playing well lately. And so I think it's definitely a positive for the Knicks if he plays. But like you mentioned, Julius Randle's been playing really well lately too. And so I certainly think they can be okay against a team like Portland.
Plus, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say the biggest thing for me, too, is when you have this matchup between Nurkic and Randle, is that he's going to drag him outside the box. And the rebounding advantage he may or may not have, Nurkic, I mean, is gone now because he's not going to be anywhere near the rim if he's covering Randle. If he's got my boy in the middle, Robinson, it might become a different outcome. But I have such confidence in the Knicks tonight. It's not even funny.
That's awesome. Yeah, well, and I think you're right about Portland too. It's funny you talked about how bad they are, and I wrote in my notes, Portland looks ugly. Simmons, McLemore, Hart, Winslow, Nurkic. I mean, that's not a killer starting lineup. And it's interesting with I feel like Portland is so reliant on Simmons' 3-point shooting in particular because he's like the man now with McCollum gone and Lillard out. And his 3-point shooting, he's had some good games, but he's had some really bad ones. 45.5 in his last game, which is awesome, but he has 2 games under 20% in his last 6. So just really up and down. And I think it's a heavy load for him to try to carry this offense. When he's like the third option, it's probably a great spot, but not here. Like you already talked about, the Knicks have allowed a lot of points, 111 or more in 5 straight games, but they've scored 111 or more in 3 of 5, and Portland has been under 100 in 4 of 6. So Portland's not a team to come out and take advantage of a Knicks team that isn't playing fantastic defense away from home. The Knicks defensive rating in their last 7 away from home is 116.2, which is pretty bad for them. It's like 108 in their last 15 games overall at home. They've allowed 102 points at home in their last 15, but 114.6 on the road. So I'm just trying to bring up, there is a bit of a stark difference here between the Knicks at home and on the road in their last 15 games. But on the other side, Portland's defensive rating in their last 6 at home is 116.5. So that's nothing to write home about either. The last thing I'd say is just on a couple of the trends here. It speaks exactly to what you already said. And part of the reason I'd lean this way as well is the Knicks are 5-1 against the spread in the last 6 between these two teams. And the under is 9-2 in the last 11 meetings between these two. So I think both of those spots that you were pointing toward are probably the best looks in this game. The other thing, you said this before we got on. I'd be curious your thoughts. I wonder about either laying the juice or taking the Knicks and one of the other teams you feel really good about on the money line today.
Well, I would do that for sure because Portland is a dumpster fire. They're not going to win this game. I don't even think they're going to try to win this game. I mean,
it could be.
They beat the Lakers, but so what? I mean, really, so what? That's why that number is so low at 5.5. It should be more like 8. And the end of the day is even if the Knicks are fully healthy, or even if they're missing Barrett, they should be about a 7-point favorite tonight. So I think that past victory over the Lakers has influenced this line, so to speak. And that's a clear indication they're playing against the Knicks, who are a better team than the Lakers also. I think that this is just a slam dunk. If there's such a thing, I would do this for sure. The Knicks are going to crack this team today.
Just don't use the L word. The lock.
No, I never do. Locks belong on doors.
We know that doesn't work, right?
I wrote that in my book. Locks belong on doors.
Yeah.
I don't mind whale plays. I get it. I totally get what they mean by it. I work with guys who say things like that. But I also understand what they mean by that. They're just trying to catch attention to whatever they're trying to do. But when you start using the word locks, no such thing. But if there was such a thing or a very strong play tonight, it's the Knicks -5.5.
All right.
I think so.
Awesome. Well, Knicks -5.5, first strong play in the first game. Moving on to number 2, we have the Grizzlies going to the Hornets. Memphis -7, 235 total. What do you think here?
Oh, this one is going to go under probably. And here's why. You've got these two teams that don't play much defense. And you got a lot of hot dogs on this court. I mean, think about it. Ja Morant's awesome. I love him, but he's a dog. Okay. Jaren Jackson, he brings his lunch pail to work, but Ja's a dog. And there's nothing wrong with that because he does some things that are just amazing. And then that other kid over there in Charlotte, LaMelo Ball, I get him confused. The ball kid. He wants to win awards this year. You can tell. So does Ja Morant. But they've been playing so many games to the over. And Charlotte finally got the monkey off their back. They smacked the Pistons last night. I mean, they really smacked them. And at the end of the day, when you look at their schedules, who they played over their last 5 games, you'll see that 4-game winning streak from Memphis is against lottery teams. Charlotte's had a much tougher schedule. And I think what's going to happen, you also have a situation where Memphis won by 10 in their previous game. I think it was 10 points the last time they played. It was 218 to 210. I know that, but I can't remember I think it was the Hornets or the Grizzlies that won. That's right. The Grizzlies won in Memphis. So you're looking at a Hornets team that doesn't want to get swept. That's the first thing. The second thing is they're on a roll. They crushed the team last night. They're young. They're not exactly hungry, but they're going to fight with Memphis today. They want to prove that they belong. And right now they're the 7th seed, and that's the highest seed that Memphis has played in their last 5 games. So I think it's going to be a little lower scoring. I don't see them hitting 235 at all. I would go with the under.
I like it. So this is good. We're going to be on a little bit different side in terms of the team here, but all of what you just said is true. So I want to acknowledge that up front. Charlotte has had a harder schedule in the last 10 than Memphis has. Memphis has played a lot of soft teams. I was going to just pull up here and talk a little bit about the schedule. So now I will say on the other side, Charlotte did break out of their sort of scoring slump, but they played Detroit too. And Detroit, I tweeted this out this morning, they've allowed over 130 points 7 times since Christmas.
Right.
So this is a team that's playing absolutely zero defense right now. So, but I mean, 141 is a huge total, right? I'm not trying to be totally dismissive of it. They scored 158 against Indiana on January 26th. So they've had these games where they've popped off. They scored 117 against the Lakers. Other than that, they've been at 109 or less. The 109 was against Chicago. Chicago's been playing no defense, so that's not impressive to me. But they did face Boston, Cleveland, Miami in 3 straight. So that's really tough, right? That's like 3 of the best defensive teams in the league right now. Memphis on the other side, like you said, they have played a lot of weak teams here lately. They played Detroit. They played Orlando. They did play the Knicks, who have been playing okay, beat them by 12. They've played Philly, Utah, Dallas. They lost to Dallas, actually. So anyway, we don't need to go through all of that forever, but just to say, I agree with you in terms of strength of schedule, but I feel like Memphis has been absolutely dominating opponents for the most part. I feel like they're a team that's playing really hard right now, which isn't something you can always cap. And I don't feel like Charlotte shows up half the time. And I think you talked about LaMelo Ball. I think they take on the characteristic from him some, where it's like, yeah, if we can get out and get off to a good start and have a fun game and put up a lot of points, great. But if it's a grinder, if we don't get out to that fast start, I just feel like they quit sometimes.
Yeah, no, that's a fact. They do. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. And you know what else? It's something that never gets said is what you just said, is that they take on the characteristics of their point guard, and that's why LaMelo got benched a couple games too. And late in the third, fourth quarter, because he hurts them a lot of times with his hot dogging. But he's young, and you have to consider the source, the tree, the original tree. And let's face it, if you're LeVar Ball's son, you're going to have a bit of dog in you. Now, thankfully, Lonzo has kind of cleaned that up, and Lonzo's like the quiet, calm one. And this LaMelo, I think he wants to believe that he's in the top 5 in the history of the NBA, the way he plays sometimes. I don't really like Charlotte, but I think they cover. If it's 7.5, I think they cover, and you can get that right now at 7.5 some places.
Yes,
So
you can. Yep.
7 points, man, that might be a push. But this is a high total, so
Yeah.
I suspect it's going to be a lower scoring game. So I'm not sure Memphis can cover that, but I'm only interested in the total, and I think it's going under.
Yeah. So, and I'm with you on the under. And a big part of the reason for me is like what we just talked about here was that Charlotte has struggled against teams that have good defenses. And I would say Memphis has a good defense. They've held teams under 110 points in 6 out of the last 10. They've allowed 106 at home, 113 away. So 113, a little bit more.
Mm-hmm.
But this is a solid defense, even with John Morant in there. And so that's why I think Charlotte's going to go back to struggling to score more tonight. And maybe they put up like 110, 112, but I don't think they get up into the 120s.
No.
And in terms of Memphis specifically, they're number 1 in points in the paint per game in the league, and Charlotte's number 18 defending points in the paint. So that, I mean, it's not like league worst or anything, but just saying they're mediocre. And they did get Montrezl Harrell now. I think that was actually a good pickup for them with the way they play and to get a little bit of size. I think he's definitely going to help them, but I just still think Memphis is going to have too much for him. That's the side I'm on. The Grizzlies are 7-1 against the spread in their last 8 as a road favorite. Hornets 3-7-1 in the last 11 after scoring 125 or more in their previous game. 3-7 against the spread last 10 on 0 days of rest. And the Grizzlies are 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 between these two teams. But to your point, the under is 9-3 in the last 12 in Charlotte as well. So all that said, I'm with you liking the under in this game, but I'm going to go, and I agree at I think 7's a fine number, 7.5. I'd be okay with. I like it less, but I like Memphis in this game.
That's fair enough. Good luck with that.
Thanks.
That's why I only wanted a total. I mean,
yeah, totally.
That's just a high number.
Yep.
And they played last night. We'll just stick with the under.
We'll see where it goes.
We'll see. All right, what's up next?
Next one up, we have the Kings at the Wizards. Sacramento now -3. A little disclosure ahead of time. I took Sacramento +4.5 last night. So this line has swung, 7.5 points. That's a huge swing. Total of 222, but we'll talk about it given where the line is now.
Yeah, I don't have any interest in this game at all. I don't trust the Sacramento Kings at all. I don't trust the Washington Wizards at all. I would say, the total, I kind of have it at 221 or 222, excuse me. I don't know what's going to happen here. This isn't a game I would want to watch, and it's not a game I would want to wager on. It's not a game that I think should even be in the NBA today. I think that they should relegate some of these teams, and these two franchises are two ones I would start with. Complete dumpster fires, embarrassing, and adios. I have no interest, man. I can't touch this game unless it was the under. That's how I would maybe play this because I have it at 221.
Okay.
So maybe the under. I don't mean to be so negative, but this is a betting show.
Yep.
You don't want to play this game, do you?
Well,
you already did. I mean, but you got points though.
Yeah.
So that's a big difference,
It is a big difference. That's what I thought is I will talk a little bit about this game though, because and for what it's worth, I put the total in this game at 219.5. So I'm sort of with you of like maybe a little bit on the under, but I'm not super interested at that number. And where the line is now, I'm not incredibly interested in this game. But let me just give you a couple things about this game though. I think Washington is with Brooklyn as one of the worst teams in the league right now. And so when we look at very recent history, I think it helped Sacramento to get rid of Buddy Hield. Even though I like that trade for the Pacers overall, I just think Hield in that system in Sacramento, which is a dumpster fire, like you said. But I think he's a terrible player for that system. I think Sabonis, I even wrote in my notes, I think for this year, them getting Sabonis could help to stabilize things a little bit. And they did get De'Aaron Fox back too, who I don't necessarily love overall, but he's a good player. And he does help to facilitate and score on offense. So I think they're definitely a better team when he's playing. And Washington has just been so bad. They let's see, last 10 for Washington, they scored 113 and 118 versus Brooklyn. But other than that, they had one game at 115. The rest are 106 or less. They've had 4 games under 100. One of those was 80 points. Another one was 87. Like,
Wow.
this is just a team that can't score right now. And they have allowed 112 or more in 7 out of their last 10. Sacramento shot 33.3% or better from 3-point range in 5 straight games. That's good. If they can do that, I think they can be okay offensively. The Kings are 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 meetings between these two. To the under that we talked about, that's 8-1 in the last 9 meetings between these two. So there are just some things here where I would say, I think Sacramento, they're so inconsistent. It's hard to play them. But I think they're a better team as they stand today than Washington is. And Washington has been terrible lately. So if I was going to lean anywhere here, it would still be with the Kings, even at -3, though I would have been very hesitant to bet it. I like it where I got it at +4.5, but I'd probably stay away.
Well, that's a good one. In terms of the total, the Wizards are 2-8 in over bets in their last 10 games versus Sacramento, and they've lost 6 units. This is going to be, Sabonis brings something different to the table. He brings 1, physicality, 2, he's consistent, and 3, he has some heart. And that's something that team does not have. You bring up the Fox kid, he's a nice player, but he's a hot dog too. Yeah. The difference is he slides out of the bun and disappears and slides underneath the seats when things get tough. Whereas Sabonis does not. I don't know how that's going to work together with them. I don't think Sabonis is going to be there very long. That's just a mess over there, man. I mean, they traded away that Halliburton kid for Domantas Sabonis. A guy who they won't keep. And they trade that kid Halliburton, by the way. Watch out for that kid. Agreed. He's really good, and he's now in a system with a real head coach and a real franchise. And I know the Pacers sometimes aren't everyone's cup of tea, but that team is consistent. They have a foundation, if you will. They might have struggled the last couple seasons, and they shouldn't have, because they had this mess with Turner, Sabonis, and they gave up Drew Holiday. That hurt them a little bit too. But at the end of the day, that's a better team. I think that the Kings and the Wizards, I think the Kings should probably win this game. You're very lucky you got points. I'm surprised you got points. Somebody must have been asleep at the wheel over at Line Originators, because that's a good number. Good for you. But outside of the under or the total, I have zero interest in this thing.
I will throw real quick in there. I'd almost, if I was going to play an under, I think I'd play the Wizards team total under, because I can see the Kings actually scoring a lot of points here potentially. I'm not saying they will. I'd feel more confident in the Wizards team total under than
you know what? That makes sense. The one problem with the Kings, though, is I think that they're pretty bad defensively, and they've given up 117 points per game over their last 5. So, that's why I just don't involve myself with these kind of games. Because there's so much unknown. We have no idea what these two teams are going to do. We know the Wizards stink, but they stink on purpose. The Kings, they just stink because they stink. They haven't been good since Chris Webber left, and that's the truth. And they've gone through so much. I mean, it just goes to show, when you let them aloof zone things, nothing goes well. Ask the people in Las Vegas with the Palms; they'll tell you.
Well, I'm with you. Betting on the Kings is a tricky proposition, so we will leave them in the dust.
Yeah. Let's get into some good games here.
Go on to the Spurs at the Pelicans here. Ooh. New Orleans is -4.5. Total of 226.5 in this one.
Ooh, you know what? The Pelicans might be better than we think. CJ McCollum's going to bring something to that team. It's called experience. CJ McCollum's used to being, because he played so long in Portland, being an underdog, and that team got to the conference finals. They got to the playoffs after they lost their entire starting 5. A lot of that had to do with CJ. Now, CJ can bring the ball up the floor. He's an underrated point guard, and he's an underrated scorer, really, too, because that kid can light it up. The Spurs, they're not the same Spurs. They're not, people talk about Coach Popovich as the greatest of all time. He might be. but it didn't hurt to have Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili on your roster either. When we see him not having these kind of players, what do we see then? So we have to kind of take all those things with a grain of salt. That's not an insult against Coach Popovich. I think he's brilliant, but maybe the Spurs team isn't. And I think the Pelicans are, I hate to use the word due, but I think they're due for a little bit of a run. And, when you look at this Pelicans team, and we talked about this together on my show, they're not as bad as people think they are. Forget about Zion Williamson. Nobody's going to see him this year unless you're going to McDonald's. And the reality is you have a good core now with Ingram and McCollum who can put the ball in the basket. I'm not sure the Spurs can deal with this tonight. And I think the Pelicans win this game outright. I don't worry about the spread. I would play them on the money line along with the Knicks tonight is what I would do, because they're going to beat the Spurs tonight.
Yeah, all right. I don't hate that. So I think the thing that we agree on here, when you said the Spurs or the Pelicans are going to go on a run with CJ McCollum, I agree with you, but what I'm less sure about is whether that run starts tonight. So I've actually been a little bit skeptical of how long it's going to take for CJ McCollum to integrate into the Pelicans, because this team has run through Brandon Ingram so much. Mm-hmm. And I do believe they're going to figure it out. And I do believe that they're going to be better because they have CJ McCollum. And I think you and I are on the same page. I like this team pretty well. I mean, I think they get into the playoffs, whether it's the play-in or whatever. And I think they're a tough out for somebody. Mm-hmm. This is a solid team overall. But I'm not confident that they're going to gel this quickly. McCollum had a really rough first game, and I read that he said with all the travel and transition that his legs were tired and he had a tough time getting into his shots, and that could 100% be the only issue.
Yeah, sure.
But I'm not confident that the Pelicans are ready to start that run yet. On the other side with the Spurs, DeJounte Murray is ridiculous. Yes. I mean, this guy just put up another massive triple-double last night. The Pelicans are not phenomenal on defense. I mean, Herb Jones has been good on defense, so maybe that can help slow DeJounte down some. And I'm not high on the Spurs. Don't get me wrong. Like, they have some – really what the Spurs have is they have shooters around DeJounte Murray who have to shoot well for them to win or be in games, which they did yesterday. This was one of the interesting things I found looking into the numbers in the game log is if you look at the Spurs over their last 10 games, they've gone back and forth game to game with how they've shot both from field goal range and from three-point range. So for the last 10 games, they've gone over 50, under 50, over 50, under 50. Every other game for 10 games shooting. Three-point range in their last 10. They went last night against the Hawks where they went off 56.3, 24.2, 46.4, 24.2, 48.5. You get the idea. Like, go look at the game log. It's literally every other game right now. Of massive swing shooting, not just a little bit, like massive swing shooting. So that for me is probably it's only one thing, but I think I'm going to probably stay off of this game because I do think in the long run that the Pelicans are the better team for sure. If this game was a month from now after the All-Star break, I would have the Pelicans.
Okay.
But I think in this spot, I'm just not confident in them. Another thing that adds to that for me, the Spurs are 5-0 against the spread in the last 5 meetings in New Orleans between these two teams.
Right.
The under is 5-0 in the last 5 meetings between these two teams as well. And so actually, if I was interested in something here, I think I would be interested in the under.
Makes sense.
Because I'm not sure about the Pelicans getting it going offensively yet, and the Spurs are due to come back down to earth.
There's one thing. I used to do a podcast called The Blazers Edge. If you've ever followed the Portland Trail Blazers, Blazers Edge is their big website. And one thing I learned about CJ McCollum is that when he has a stinker, he explodes the next night because he's a scorer. So if there's a prop bet out there, over under or something, take the over. I bet you he goes out and explodes. That kid has a lot of pride. He's a real scorer. I mean, he was a scorer in Canton, Ohio in high school. He was a scorer at Lehigh, and he's been a scorer throughout his starting career in the NBA. And you got to think that he's just going to go off. And Brandon Ingram is going to kind of give the ball up a little more. He's going to let him do that. He's going to let CJ do his thing because his thing is going to make Brandon's thing much, much better. The other thing about this game, too, is Jonas Valanciunas. He's old school. He ain't going out behind that arc. So the Spurs are going. This is going to be a man-on-man war in the paint too, and I guarantee you, Valanciunas is going to cook Portal's lunch for him tonight.
Yeah, that is an advantage for sure. I would definitely agree.
Yeah, old school centers like that, when they play against old school younger guys like Portal and them, they rock their world.
Yeah.
That's been a trend since Jonas played in Toronto. So I remember one game they were playing the Miami Heat, Hassan Whiteside, and it was hilarious. So I was playing DFS at the time because I was in Greece and whatever, and I pegged Valanciunas just for the heck of it. It was real cheap, and I crushed the GPP because of it. And then I kept that together. I said, these old school guys, no, when they face guys similar to them, they have more experience. They know what they're doing. So maybe there's a prop there for that as well.
All right, I like it. Looking at McCollum and Valanciunas props, I'll probably check that out after we're done here. I like it. All right, well, let's head on to the next one. Cavs at the Sixers. Philadelphia -4, 206.5 total. And I will just say, as of now, Darius Garland is listed as a game time decision for this one, as is Harden, I believe.
Oh, I'm sure of that. Yeah. I had the Cavaliers last night, and I picked them before the news came out with Darius, and they snuck one past.
They did.
And I was pretty thrilled about that.
I had the Pacers at -6 or +6.5, so I wasn't pumped about that one.
No, I didn't think that you would be, because they won by 7, right? But I flipped the channel because I said, the Cavs are going to get one. They're way down, and they came back hard. Didn't Philadelphia play last night?
Yes, they did.
Yeah. Yep. That's big problems for them. I don't think Embiid plays well on back-to-backs. And that's a big problem. You're going against a red-hot Cleveland team who believes they can win every game they play now.
That's true.
I mean, when you have a situation where a young, hungry team who people still don't believe is for real has a chance to take out the 76ers, they're going to do it if they can. I'll tell you what I would do. I would throw a couple shekels on the Cavs money line in this one, because I have a feeling that they're going to knock that team off. I mean, I would also probably take the Cavs in the points. If James Harden is out, or Embiid, that's another thing you have to think about. That's a team now with Harden. And if Harden doesn't play, they can sacrifice a loss or two now. They don't need to worry about winning now, because once those two get together, the way they play, Harden's willingness to give up the ball, because he's always been unselfish. He's not like Russell Westbrook or Kyrie Irving or those kind of guys. He'll dish the rock. And you know what? When that happens, that team's going to be really good. But they're also tired. You can tell. You saw that last night if you watched the Philly game. Those guys look tired. The Cavs, they look fresh. And if Garland plays, this thing should be about 2 points for Philadelphia. I'm with the Cavs tonight. I have to be. I just love them. I get excited watching these young guys who aren't cocky play basketball. And JB Bickerstaff, he deserves a team like this, And after all the nonsense he's gone through at the end of Memphis' career, and then, of course, in Houston, he deserves this team. And they love him. Look at their timeouts. Every eye is on JB. Everywhere. He'll be standing away. They're looking and waiting. That's a team that's dialed in, focused, and they believe in what the coach is telling them, and they're winning because of it. And I think winning last night, that wasn't emotional for them. They won without their best player. And this time, they think they can win every time without him. So keep that in mind.
Yeah, I agree that I think this is probably a pretty good spot for Cleveland. I think it's going to be interesting to watch if Embiid plays or not even. I mean, he has been playing on back-to-backs overall, but I just think it's always worth watching with star players, with Embiid in particular, whether he'll even play on a back-to-back. So this is a game that I kind of go a couple different ways with when I look at the data. Cleveland has scored 105 or less in 9 of their last 11. So they have been struggling to score some. However, they've held opponents under 100 in 6 out of the last 11. So they've played pretty good defense. On the other side, Philadelphia in their last 15 has been better on defense at home. Their defensive rating at home is 105.7. On the road, it's been 113.5. So Philadelphia is a team that was playing better on the road, worse at home for a lot of the season, but it seems like they've turned a corner a little bit, where it's more like last year, because last year they played so well at home. And so it seems like maybe they're turning that corner toward playing better on the road at home. However, Philadelphia has their worst defensive rating of any time frame on back-to-backs, and it's pretty high. It's 114, which for them is a high defensive rating. So the back-to-backs haven't been kind to them. And Philadelphia has been averaging 110 in their last 10 games at home. So just saying here, like, Cleveland hasn't been scoring well, but they've played good defense. Philly's played good defense, but they've been scoring well. And so I just feel like this is a mix of stats that kind of point in different directions.
Okay.
So for me here, and another one on the back-to-back that I'll throw in, it's the worst time frame of any for Cleveland's offensive rating too, 105.3 offensive rating on back-to-back. So it hasn't been a spot that's been kind to them. So I think in this game, if Garland plays, I actually am with you. I would look to Cleveland, and maybe Embiid even sits. But I'm with you. Cleveland comes out and plays hard every night. They're not going to just shut it down and not show up for a game. And I definitely like that in a team. Also, they're 6-1 against the spread in the last 7 meetings in Philadelphia. So that's something that bodes well for them as well. The under is 6-2 in the last 8 meetings between these two teams. If I was going to pick over under here, I would pick under. But this total's so low that I probably just stay away from that.
I would play the over, if anything. That's a low total. And especially if Embiid doesn't play. And then what about Tobias Harris? Sometimes he gets a little loosey-goosey on the second game of a back-to-back as well. Now, Philly played at home last night, I think. So their travel isn't that big, and it's not big for Cleveland. And plus, Cleveland has young guys. I would be interested to see if Kevin Love plays tonight. Because when you look at that bench, and let's be honest, the 76ers depleted they really hurt themselves. When they traded Seth Curry away, they lost their shooter. And James Harden, if he doesn't play, they don't have anyone to take his place. They just don't. And that's another thing to keep an eye on, especially when you consider the Cavaliers are great defenders this year. They're very good at limiting points. They're very good at getting hands in faces and making things uncomfortable for shooters. And I think this is going to be a lot closer than people think. In fact, I'm even more sold on the Cavs now.
All right. Well, we'll leave it at that for the Cavs and see if they can pull through on another one tonight. And we will move on to a game that I'm actually looking forward to quite a bit. The Nuggets at the Raptors. Toronto has been absolutely on fire, and they are -3.5 at home tonight with a total of 222.5. What do you think when you look at this one?
I think will there be fans in the stands tonight in Toronto?
I don't believe so.
Right. I don't think they've lifted that yet. I think it starts at the end of the month. They feed off their fans. They always have. They got that wannabe rapper. What's his name? Drake standing on the sidelines. That guy.
They do.
That guy. I used to crack on him all the time. What a wannabe. Great music, I guess, but what a wannabe. You start talking to players on the sideline like you're a player, they just laugh. I guarantee they would. Now, Toronto's won 8 games in a row. They played really well, but I think Denver isn't that good either, honestly. I used to be sold on Denver. I'm not anymore. Jokic can be loosey-goosey in the fourth quarter, depending on how things are going for him personally. And I think that's a big problem. Will Barton hasn't been Will Barton. Has he this year? Not really. We don't hear his name getting called much. And I just think that Toronto might have too much for them at home. This is another one where you're looking at a money line play inside a parlay, if that's what you're going to do. Not a full bet parlay, like a half unit or a quarter unit, something, and play a couple teams with them. The Knicks being one, the Pelicans being the other. That would be a good 3-banger right there. The total, I'm not sure, man, because Denver's been giving up some points lately, right? And let me see. In fact, I have it right here somewhere. Let me see. Denver over their last 5 games has allowed 109 points per game. Toronto's actually right there with them, 110. So neither of these teams are really stopping folks, but they seem to be outscoring folks. And I think the Raptors outscore the Denver Nuggets tonight.
Yeah, so I'm going to end up with you, but a couple things I'm going to say. I actually think the Nuggets are a decent team.
Okay.
I think they've turned a corner a little bit, but I think Toronto right now, at least, is a really good team.
Mm-hmm.
So the over in this game is one of my favorite bets of the day so far.
Okay.
I lined this game at 232.5 when I did it.
Wow.
So I think, and obviously I might be putting it too high, but all that to say, like, half the reason that I like the over is what you already said. Both of these teams are giving up points on the whole. They're playing in higher scoring games lately.
Mm-hmm.
But the other part of it that I like is both of these teams are scoring as well. Denver scored 115 or more in 11 of their last 16 and 4 of their last 7 on the road.
Right.
When they haven't, it's been against good defensive teams. Like they put up, I have to look, was it 110 last night against Boston, who has been absolutely shutting people down? I mean, yeah, you don't ever want to lose, but I actually thought in terms of the scoring, that was an indicator to me that they're still firing well on offense, scoring that many points against Boston. So I think both these teams come out and put up a lot of points. Toronto has scored 114 or more in 5 straight games. Okay. They're just on fire offensively right now. And they've gone through some lulls. So I get a little nervous about that with Toronto at times because they've had stretches of 4 or 5 games where they're scoring 105 or less. So, of course, that could pop back up here. But I think that it's a good spot offensively for both these teams. So I actually initially, when I looked at this game, thought that I would be on Denver plus the points because I think they've been playing well. And I think Toronto's due for maybe a little bit of regression. Denver scored 115.3 points per game on the road in their last 15. 110.3 defensive rating, not terrible. 4.7 point differential on the road, plus 4.7 in their last 15. Toronto on the other side, a plus 5 point differential at home. They've been scoring 118.4 points per game, shooting 42.1% from 3-point range. So the reason that I'm not going to, so I'm just saying offensively, it feels somewhat close to me and defensively somewhat close. The reason that I'm not going to end up being on Denver is that Denver's been bad on back-to-backs. They're 2-7 straight up on back-to-backs, 3-6 against the spread. I think I had a couple things here about their scoring too. If I can find, I don't. Oh, here it is. It's their 4th back-to-back in their last 15 games, and their defensive rating in the previous 3 was 119.8. So just massive. They did score 110 points per game in those games, but only had 15.7 free throw attempts. So that just says to me like maybe they get a little tired. They dog it on defense some. So. With all that said, I would lean toward the Raptors here if I was going to make a play. I do think that this ends up being a decent spot for them. However, the Nuggets are 7-2 against the spread in their last 9 meetings in Toronto, and the over is 8-1 in the last 9 meetings in Toronto. So I love the over here.
Excuse me, my coffee went down the wrong tube.
Excuse
me. Oh yeah, it's easier to do radio this way.
That coffee will get to you.
Oh my Lord. Anyway, the Raptors are 8-2 in an over bets in their last 10 games versus Denver for 5.27 total units won. And the Raptors are also 5-0 in spread bets in their last 5 games as a favorite for 4.5 units. So that just backs up what you're saying. Boy, I tell you what, that went right down the wrong tube. Don't drink in podcasts.
That's right.
There's your thing.
Hey, I've been doing it too. I got lucky today.
You know what? When you're doing radio, though, nobody can see all that. I can mute my microphone and you just wait for me to unmute it.
That's right. Wait until you're done.
Yeah, these videos are different, but it's all good. So that's a good game. What's the next?
Yeah. All right. We'll keep it moving along here on this big slate. Probably your favorite game because it involves the Nets.
Yeah.
The Nets at the Heat, Miami minus 10.5 and a 219. See, this is good. We're getting to know each other well enough that I know the spots you're going to appreciate here. 219.5 total. So I can guess some of what you're going to say here, but give it to us.
Man, please. I leave the Nets alone. They're just an embarrassment. I've been alive for a long time, and I've been watching the Nets since they were an ABA team with Julius Irving. Okay, so here's what I'm going to tell you. Outside of a couple years when Julius Irving played for the Nets, and outside of a couple seasons where Jason Kidd was with them when they were still the New Jersey Nets, outside of that, they've been awful. That's one of the worst franchises in history. If they were in the EPL, they'd have been regulated by now or relegated by now. I can't say that word ever anymore.
Regulated
Relegated.
too, maybe.
Yeah, they would be out. I have a hard time believing that the Brooklyn Nets right now could beat Gonzaga by 30 points or by 10 points or cover a 10-point spread. They're awful. They got some players in that trade, but no one wants to play with Kyrie Irving. No one, except for Kevin Durant. And, well, I don't think he does either, really. He's stuck. And at the end of the day, that team's awful. Kyrie's awful. They've lost 10 straight. Most of those games were road games, too, where he played.
Mm-hmm.
And Harden didn't because, he got his way. I would have been begging out, too. But at the end of it, that's too big a spread. I mean, even for the lousy Nets, that's too big a spread. Miami's offense is okay. It's not explosive. Are they going to beat that team? If you look back at the Miami logs, who have they beaten by more than 11 points? Probably not too many, because that's not how they roll. Jimmy Buckets goes like this. I'm going to roll up these sleeves, and I'm going to go bang on somebody. And that's what they do. You also have inconsistent shooters on the Heat. And if they're not clicking on all four cylinders, they're done. I mean, they're not going to beat anybody by 11. I shouldn't have said it that way. They're going to still win, but they're not going to cover an 11-point spread. That being said, I can't trust the Brooklyn Nets to cover one either because they're just really bad. And they don't listen to their coach. They don't pass the ball. They don't do anything right. And no, I'm leaving this game alone. I might play the under. You know what? I if I were going to do this, if you held a gun to my head, I would probably play the under in this game. But no, you can't play Brooklyn. Not against a team that's not explosive. No.
Yeah, so I completely agree that you can't play Brooklyn here. I actually am interested. I haven't bet Miami's spread here, but I'll give you the reasons why I'm thinking about it.
Okay.
So it really partly comes down to Brooklyn has been unbelievably atrocious, not just bad. So Miami's held opponents to 100 points or less in 4 straight, and their opposition hasn't been phenomenal, but I was just looking, it's actually not been as bad as you'd think. Pelicans, I mean, Washington, terrible, but Pelicans, Hornets, Spurs, holding those teams, I mean, 100 or less, 95, 86, 97. That's pretty solid defense.
Yes.
And Brooklyn has had a really hard time scoring. On the other side, Brooklyn can't stop anybody. They've allowed 110 in 8 straight games and 120 or more in 5 of those 8. So over half the time. And like you said, mostly on the road, they're allowing 120 or more. Their defensive rating in their last 10 away from home, 120.3. That's like all-time atrocious.
Yes.
So Brooklyn is just unbelievably bad. The one thing that I think could not save them, but help them a little bit, is if Drummond passes whatever physicals he needs to and is able to play in this game, he gives them a little bit of a presence inside that could help them a little bit defensively. I still think Miami wins this game regardless, but he could help them a little bit by giving them some defensive presence. So I actually think in this game, when you go look back at how Miami's done against bad teams, because I would say Brooklyn is a very bad team right now.
Yeah.
They beat Washington by 21. They beat San Antonio by 17. They beat the Pelicans by 15, which is not even a terrible team, right? They beat Charlotte by 18. That's not a terrible team. So all of that has me interested in this spread here. It is wide, and I don't generally like to take spreads that are bigger than 10. It's sort of like a little bit of a rule, but I also feel like we have a window here where Brooklyn is so bad. And once the trade settles in and Durant comes back, they're not going to be this bad. Like they will be better once those things happen. And so there's part of me that just wants to ride the wave of a team that doesn't even deserve to be in the NBA right now against a Heat team that's playing well. The other things I'd look at here, I've done this in a few games lately, and it's worked out okay, is even potentially playing the Nets under and the Heat over in terms of team totals.
That could be a play. So that might be a good one.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of a way of playing the spread, but giving yourself a little bit of insurance. So if it goes one way or the other, you could go 1-1 and kind of push. But if it goes the way you think it will, you hit both of them. So
let's see how Seth Curry plays with Kyrie Irving.
Yeah, that'll be interesting too.
because Kyrie ain't going to give up the ball. Kyrie's going to dribble for 22 seconds and shoot. That's what he does. He's been doing that his whole career since back in high school, and not will not change. And that's a bad thing for him. It's a bummer for him. But no, I'm not even going to watch this game, and I'm in New York. I just can't watch the Nets play. I won't watch Kyrie Irving. If they make it to the finals, I won't watch. I just can't watch that guy.
I can't. I'm going to watch the finals. I'm just going to if the Orlando Magic make it to the finals, I'm watching.
So. Well, you know what? And I'm going to put a caveat in there because the finals happen so late. I'll be at tennis camp this summer.
Oh, there you go.
I won't see them anyway. I'll be too busy. But
right.
You know what? Let's move on to the next game.
Yep, let's do it. Next up, we have the Thunder at the Bulls. We got 4 games left here on this big slate. Chicago minus 12.5 on a back-to-back, and the total here is 220.
Ooh, this could be interesting. Thunder's pretty good on the road cover. That's one thing we know. They play defense a little bit, depending on who's in the lineup, though. If SAA, is that what they call him? Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? SGA. Yeah, him, whatever. If he's on the floor, they might be a little better defensively.
He's out.
But at the end of the day, I just can't see playing this game. There's too many points involved. Chicago could pace them. They really could. Or they could get blown out by them too. Because really, for me, Chicago is not where they usually should or where they should be based on what their roster is. I don't know why that is exactly. I have no idea why. But the Thunder, no, I have to pass on this game, bro.
All right. Sounds good. So far, I've passed on this game too, but as with many of them today, I do have a little bit of interest, but I wish I knew which Bulls team is going to show up. So recently here, the Bulls have actually been scoring phenomenally, but they've also played almost no defense.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, in Oklahoma City, without Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, you have a team that can't score at all, but plays some decent defense. So here's some numbers to back that up. Chicago in their last 10 has scored 110 or more in 9 out of 10 and 120 or more in 6 out of 10. But in that stretch, they've allowed 110 or more in 8 out of 10 and 115 or more in 6 out of 10. So again, scoring, but playing no defense.
Mm-hmm.
However, we are now on the I've been doing this for a while. I don't know if you've heard me say it, but like the number of games Oklahoma City is going to play without Shai where they score 104 or less, that is up to 12 games now, where they've scored 104 or less when Shai doesn't play. Now, they're going up against a team that's been playing no defense, so that get tested tonight. But 12 games is a strong sample size. They've scored under 100 in 5 of their last 7. They have 95 points per game in their last 2 on the back end of a back-to-back. So in their last 14 games, Oklahoma City did have their highest point total in those 14 games against the Bulls at 110, but Shai was playing. And he's not playing now. And they, to me, have proven that they cannot score when he's out.
Right.
Chicago, just a few more numbers on their offense. They've been ridiculous at home in the last 7. 124.6 offensive rating, 121.4 points per game, 53.6% field goal percentage. So, man, they've just been crushing it offensively. And a weird thing with the Bulls, often on a back-to-back, I've said this before, like I'll look to potentially downgrade a team if they're on a back-to-back. I don't do that with the Raptors because they're really good on a back-to-back. The Bulls are 5-1-1 against the spread in their last 7 when they're starting 5 combined for more than 160 minutes the previous day. So not just back-to-back, but when those 5 play a lot, they've been 5-1-1 against the spread the next day. The Thunder are 2-5 against the spread in the last 7 meetings in Chicago. And the over is 6-1 in the last 7 meetings. So the things I'm interested in here are the Bulls team total. I'm interested in the Bulls against the spread. If they show up today, I think they pace the Thunder by 20. The question is just whether they show up or not.
Right.
And then every game the Thunder play without Shai until the streak's broken, I'm going to consider the Thunder's team total over. I think it's at 103.5. Mm-hmm. They haven't been past 104. So that's something I at least have to consider.
You know what they have done, though, is they played defense. They're 8th in points allowed over the last 5 games, 106 points per game. A lot of that has to do with the fact that maybe SGA is not in there. I don't know. All I know is that the Thunder is a bad team. I think they are. The
Yeah.
Bulls, the Bulls are up and down like an elevator, and I don't trust them. So I would leave this one alone. This is just a weird one because OKC has this habit of covering on the road, and we talked about that a couple weeks ago on the show, on my show. So I leave that alone. I mean, follow Big Tasty over here. He's doing better than I am this year. But
Oh,
at the end of the day, I fade this one. Ugh.
yeah. And I think that's probably a smart play. It's a tough one to know which way it's going to go. The last thing I will throw in terms of Oklahoma City's defense, though, is they've not played many good offensive teams. So I'm not going to go through it all right now, but go back and look at their game log if you're interested and just see what teams they've played as they've held teams down scoring. There aren't many good offensive teams in there. So, but they definitely have held those teams down that they've played. So, all right, that one we will move on from.
Perfect.
To the third from last, Clippers at Mavericks. Rematch from a couple days ago. Clippers +7 instead of 6.5, and the total of 214.5.
Luka broke off a 50 piece the other
he
night.
did. Yep,
I wonder why that happened. I mean, I'm sure he was probably happy.
Yeah, maybe so.
I don't know.
KP.
I can't believe. I know the one thing I do know is that those two are very good friends away from the game. And they just didn't work together. And plus, Porzingis is injured. He's coming off a horrific leg injury. He's 7'3". Those things they're never the same. That's just too big a guy for that not to happen. That being said, this is an interesting one for me, but I don't like playing Clipper games. I didn't like them when they were really decent. When they used to call them Lob City. Do you remember that?
Oh,
With
for
Chris
sure.
Paul,
Blake Griffin
or
and Chris
actually
Paul.
before Chris Paul got there.
DeAndre Jordan.
Usually when Chris Paul shows up, that's when I get disinterested, if you will, because he plays so slow, and I get why, and he likes to do it that way. The Mavs, though, I'm not so sure about this team. Yeah, the Clippers are getting 7 on the road, though. I mean, that's a lot of points. For a team that's hard to trust, and that team being Dallas, I think they're just hard to trust. And you never really know. We won't even know. I mean, there's not even a good trend for me to use here. At the end of the day, we have no idea who's going to play from one day to the next in a Jason Kidd lineup. And we have no idea if they even want to play for Jason Kidd. That's a decent team. Finney Smith is a nice player. They just extended for that reason. But that being said, I can't play this game. It's just, no. I need more points. I need about 217.5.
Oh, gotcha. On the total, you need
I just need more points.
Gotcha.
And to take the Clippers, well, that would be your play. That's the sharp play, is the Clippers.
Yep. I think so too. So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on this game, but I'm just going to give you like 3 things. Number one, what you said, Doncic had 51 points, but more than that, he shot 65.4% from field goal range and 50% from 3-point range, which he just doesn't do. 45.2 and 32.4 is season averages. So extremely unlikely that's going to happen again. And other guys could step up. Don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Second thing, Clippers only had 31 rebounds. I mean, they're a bad rebounding team in general, so they're not going to blow the doors off rebounding either. But that was tied for their worst rebounding game of the year. That's very unlikely to happen again. The Clippers are 9-3 against the spread in the last 12 meetings in Dallas. So those things to me just say, if I'm making a play here, it's on the Clippers with the points. I agree with you. I like the under, but I would like it to be over 215 if I was going to take it. So
I would need more. Yeah, for sure. But this should be an interesting game, and I'm sure that Clipper fans and Maverick fans will enjoy it, but they will be enjoying this game without me.
I'm going to have like multiple screens going tonight with NBA and UFC and all that stuff. So
I would need about 12 gummies, those, to watch this one.
Hey, do what you got to do, man.
But if I did that, I wouldn't be able to do anything for about a month, which might not be a bad thing. I could take a break, but I can't do this one.
You could use it. All right.
If I can't watch it, I can't bet it.
All right. Well, we'll move on to the next then, the other LA team. The
Oh,
Lakers at the Warriors. Golden State is -6.5 here, and the total's 224.
Oh, my word. You know what? This is going to be a fascinating game for one reason. They're going to pace the Lakers tonight. I have not seen a dumpster fire like the Los Angeles. Now think about it this way. You got a big three, a legit big three. You got a kid who averaged a triple-double for 2 consecutive seasons. I didn't think he'd do one. And let's not forget that he's also a quadruple-double guy sometimes because he's prone to have 10 turnovers a game too. There's a reason I used to call him third row because every 2 or 3 passes end up in the third row. That being said, they've been benching him, and now he's unhappy, and rightly so. But the Warriors are 8-2 in money line bets in their last 10 home games, and that means they've won 5.5 units. That's not a bad thing right there. I think there's one more here. Here you go. The Lakers are 1-9 in money line wagers in their last 10 games as an underdog, and they've lost 8 units. You Laker fans who continually bet on your team and lose your money on the money line, you're going to lose again tonight if you do that. Just trust me when I tell you. Golden State is going to pace that team. Klay Thompson's going to bury them. He's going to play tonight. He took the night off, I think, 2 nights ago. And I think Curry did also because they're gearing for this. This is on ABC TV in Golden State. And I don't care what anybody says. LeBron looks tired. Anthony Davis looks like he doesn't want to be there. And Russell Westbrook, watching him sulk on the bench in the fourth quarter is one of the things that I enjoy most. and I'm serious. And Frank Vogel is a tremendous basketball coach. But it's hard to be the coach of a team with that many egos that won't listen to you. And I think this is going to be Frank Vogel's last game as the Lakers coach. I think that the Warriors are going to embarrass them tonight, and he's going to be the scapegoat for general manager LeBron. And that being said, I would not bet on the Lakers to do anything other than lose tonight. Buy the spread, buy the total, buy the money line, buy every metric known to man. They are going to lose tonight.
This is funny because I'm usually the one that loves the Warriors and is on them too much in spots that I shouldn't be. So I like that you're strong on the Warriors here.
Oh, yeah.
The Lakers have been terrible, and the Warriors have been pretty good lately, though they've had a couple games where it feels like they haven't shown up. And sometimes it's because people don't play, but sometimes it just feels like they haven't totally shown up either. I think the numbers support where you're going overall here. The last 9 at home, the Warriors are scored 110 or more in 6 out of 9 and 120 or more in 3 out of those 9. The Lakers' last 15, their point differential at home is -0.8. Not that bad, right? Mm-hmm. But on the road, it's 6.3. Golden State's point differential at home is 12.5. So Golden State has been running people at home, and the Lakers have not been playing well on the road. So that's a good combo for the Warriors here tonight.
Oh, yeah. The Lakers don't play well anywhere.
Yeah, right.
They wouldn't play against their reflection in the mirror. And they're just awful.
We should set that game up, I guess.
What's that?
We should set that game up against their reflections.
I would love to do that, and yeah. I would bet against them.
Yeah.
I would for sure. But it's going to be on national TV. It's going to be humiliating for LeBron. And of course, it's going to be Frank Vogel's fault. And he's going to get fired after tonight.
We'll mark that down and tweet it out when it happens.
Yeah, do that because I'm usually right about these things. And it's just, you can just tell it's brewing. Somebody has to take the responsibility for all this. It won't be the players. It certainly won't be Rob Pelinka. So I would have to say the one guy that's going to be is Frank Vogel. And, that's a pity. But you can see that coming from the day he stepped on the podium as the new head coach. It's just a matter of time, man.
Yeah.
Just at least Tyronn Lue is not on the roster or on the bench to take his place.
Yeah.
Like he did to David Blatt. But the guy who's behind all this is David Fizdale. Just mark that down. David Fizdale is going to mess up his third franchise when he becomes the new head coach of the Lakers.
All right, we'll mark it down.
Mark it down.
In the meantime, a few more numbers to go over here relating to this game. the Lakers defensive rating in their last 10 away from home, 115.8. So bad defensively. And in their last 4 on 2 days of rest, it's 122. They're on 2 days of rest here, and they've just been atrocious defensively on 2 days of rest. So I think this is a good spot for Golden State. I'm with you on that. I think it's a good spot for Curry. Actually, the Lakers are really bad defensively against point guards. So I think it's a good spot for him there. The one thing I will say on the other side, the Lakers are 4-1 against the spread in the last 5 in Golden State. So I do just like to throw those trends out there. The under is 5-1 in the last 6 meetings in Golden State, but those trends are the only thing that would push me away from the Warriors here and their team total over. I'm less sure about the total period. But I think this is actually another good parlay piece potentially to the Warriors on the money line.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Take the Warriors in every aspect, no matter where they are on your line or on your betting sheet, take them. Just scratch the Lakers off the card and just put Warriors in because they're going to smash this team.
It's a Warriors bonanza.
Oh, yeah, because this is a party. This is a party for them. If Draymond Green was there, it would really be a party because they do nothing more than want to beat LeBron every time they see him because they're sick of it.
And they should be able to do it tonight.
Well, they're going to pace that team. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Right.
I got off on a tangent there.
It's good you're excited about that game, which makes me excited.
If I'm still awake at 8:30, I'll watch
You'll be on it. All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, we made it to the last game of the day here.
Look what we got on our
between the Magic and the Suns. I think the most interesting thing about this game, I would have to check, but this may be the widest spread we've seen this season. Phoenix minus 16. One of the things I've actually noticed in the last week or so is and I tweeted something about this, and I've seen others do it as well, that favorites have been covering the spread like crazy, like 28-8 since Sunday or something like that. And that didn't include yesterday. And I think the bookmakers are catching on, and they're increasing. We're starting to see bigger spreads. You didn't see much over 12 until recently. And now we're up to a game like this where it's 16 and the total's 225. So I think there's some adjustment that we have to pay attention to there. What do you think about this one?
Okay, first of all, when you see a number like this, play against it. That's a lot of points, man.
It's a lot.
That's a lot of points. I know Orlando is not very good. I know what y'all say about Orlando, and everything that most y'all say is true. They're not very good. But, when you look at like their defense, for example, now I was looking at this the other day, and oh man, I guess I missed that one because they are really bad there too. They've given up 115 points per game over their last 5. Phoenix, however, has given up 108. Who knows if you're Monty Williams and you're running the table like Phoenix has, and let's face it, Phoenix has, they had a big winning streak, lost the game. Now they've got a 4-game winning streak. You might tend to rest somebody tonight, even though you're playing at home because you're going to beat that team with half your team. You should anyway. And I would think that there could be someone sitting out. And if that's the case, that number's going to drop. That's a big number. You don't even see these kind of spreads in pro football games.
It's true.
That's 2 touchdowns and a 2-point conversion. Or I'm sorry,
a safety.
Yeah. I heard that's a big prop bet out there. The game.
I've heard that too.
Some guy who's a genius wagered a couple $100 on a 2-point game. Only a safety or something. 2 points. Huh? Okay. Well, anyway, we're not that guy, and we're going to let you know that I would take the Magic. In fact, I'm going to just on principle's sake. 16 points is a lot of points.
Yeah.
Especially for a slow-based team like Phoenix.
Yeah.
And Orlando's better defense than we think.
Yeah, and even a little bit better off. I mean, they're not good. I actually got a little too high on Orlando for a little bit, but I think I'm kind of with you here. I go back and I was just scrolling through their game log a little bit while you were talking, and they have lost some games by more than this number. But I mean, they lost to Utah by 15. They beat Portland. They lost to Boston by a ton, but everybody is. They lost to Memphis by a ton, but everybody is. But before that, if you look at their games against decent teams, they lost to Chicago by 11. They lost to the Clippers. They're not a great team, but by 9. They beat Chicago. I'm not going to bore everybody by going through, but if you're interested, go scroll through the last month and a half, and what you'll find is that they've lost a lot of games by 10 to 13 points.
Right.
They lose by 10 to 13 a lot of the time, and that's why when these lines were sitting at 11 and a half, 12 and a half, I think it's a much iffier proposition, and they could lose by 25 tonight. There's no doubt. But I think what you said about them resting people potentially is a big thing. And there are some numbers, like the Magic are 6-1 against the spread in their last 7 in Phoenix. That's a decently strong trend. This is Phoenix's worst defensive month of the year. Their defensive rating is 110.5 in February. Just not obviously they're great. Phoenix is infinitely better than Orlando. There's no debate here about which team could blow the other one. If one team blows the other one out, it's Phoenix. There's no question. But I'm with you when a line gets this wide. When I first lined this game, I put it at Phoenix minus 13.5 is what I thought it should be. And I had the total at 227. So total wise, I don't think there's much there for me. But man, 2.5 more points beyond that just feels super wide. So maybe this is a principal bet today.
Could you imagine being an Orlando Magic player? You're on the road, you're all having breakfast together or whatever, and you pull out the sports page and you see you're a 16-point underdog in an NBA game?
Yeah.
If you got any heart at all, you're going to knock the crap. You're going to want to cover that one. Because you do not want to lose by 16. You don't want to lose by 17.
Especially when people are calling it, right? I mean, it's one thing to lose a game where you let go of the rope and you lose by 25. But when people are calling it, it's pretty crazy.
That's pretty crazy. But yep, we got through 11 games, man.
All right, 11 games. Hey.
And all my crazy opinions. How about that?
What I love about you, Phil, is you bring so much like knowledge and color of people in the league and all those connections.
Covered the league for a lot of years.
Most people don't have.
Covered the league. See, I've done both ends of this thing. So the end of the day is I have, my show has had many changes over the years. But before the sports betting started, it was a 5 beat writer show per day. And we covered every NBA team. My show was solid NBA, hardly any football, believe it or not, nothing but basketball, no college basketball, none of that stuff. All we did was talk NBA. So I have friends that are beat writers on every team, and I hear things all day long. And that helps me. Well, it hasn't helped me this year so much because this year has been horrific, horrendous. I know people laugh, but, when I started out, I was down 25 units before I even got to blink. Wow. I think it's a lot of that's come back. I think I've done a lot better over the last few weeks. But that being said, you have to know both sides of this. If you don't, it's so hard. Yeah. Because there's so many personalities and so many little things that happen in an NBA team on any given day that it's kind of helps if you follow beat writers. I talk about it in all my books. But, man, great stuff today, dude.
Yeah, definitely helpful. So, hey, quick before we get out of here, just remind people where they can find you because you're doing a lot of stuff, a lot of different sports. I just listened to your UFC podcast yesterday, got some good insight off that. So remind people where they can find you.
I'm so proud of that kid. I've been mentoring him for 6 years now. Anyway, you can find me at P. Naessens Show on Twitter, and you can also find me at philnaessenshow.com. That's where the show is. And then our Wolfline newsletter is published at cashwithflash.com. Man, thank you so much for letting me be a part of your show today.
Absolutely, man. It's always a pleasure to have you on. That was a big lift today with all these games. Ooh. I will say, too, I know that both of us are tracking bets on BetStamp. So if you do want to follow plays that we're making, you can find those there for both of us. Can find me on Twitter. As always, really appreciate any likes, retweets, reviews on the podcast, especially 5-star. As I always say, if it's 1 star, you can just contact me in the DMs. You don't need to put the review up there.
Right.
But appreciate any of that support you guys can give. Hope it's a great day for you across all these different sports that we got going on today. Hopefully we all have a good day. And we'll see you next time. I'll see you on Twitter. Have a good day.